Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Padatti Sham Padattikam Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Santubhi Evacha Patitenam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, as recently we had a very nice spiritual initiation here, where Patita Pavana and his twin in devotional service, Gaura Hari, right, took initiation. When one takes initiation, this is the first great step one's made towards escaping from the material energy. Why? Because it means you actually submit yourself as an inferior personality to the spiritual master, who is your worshipable deity. Why is that? Because we can relate, ask questions, get answers from our spiritual master. He can mold us into that perfect devotee of the Lord should we choose to follow him. Still have to follow. It's not automatic. The taking of Harinam initiation, first initiation, is literally your first real step towards transcendence. Because until one takes initiation from a bona fide spiritual master, they're not even considered to be exploring on the level of human life. Now that's a harsh statement, sure, but if all you're doing in your life is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, not worshiping the spiritual master, not trying to remember Krishna day in and day out, not submitting oneself to practically anyone, you haven't taken your first step yet. You're still a soul trapped in a material body that is abusing its creative activities in serving the material energy and experiencing that on a global level. And we see that the result of all of that business is global illnesses. Not counting the pandemic, we mean the mental platform, the bodily platform, I, me, and mine. Everybody was so eager for a while to pretend the pandemic wasn't happening. And then they got eager to prove it was the Chinese fault. Then they couldn't prove that, so they gave up on it and decided maybe, just maybe, we're stronger than Krishna, and we can defeat this little virus by vaccinating everyone against it, which has failed miserably around the world so far. Right? So everyone's been affected, if not infected, in this material world. It should be understood that there's a big problem here for our enjoyment. Just because a tiny little microbe comes into our existence, we're not allowed to get on a jet and fly anywhere we want. Unless, of course, we're the rich and famous, wherein they can book their own private jet, right? Go wherever they want. And you hear about this all the time. Like these days, the choice of the rich and famous to enjoy a vacation someplace or another is to rent what they call a super yacht, which these are literally boats that are 200, 300 feet long. So they get to go on their private jet to their small private airport in that particular country, and then from there take their private chauffeured limousine over to their huge hotel, which is floating, not with normal people, only with your friends, who you want there, right? And they have no problem jet-setting around the world to meet up with you and hang out on the Mediterranean or the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, completely convinced that the pandemic is for the little people. Same thing Marie Antoinette said just before the French Revolution, when the populace, being abused by the aristocratic government, rebelled and basically killed them and ran them off. Right? What did she answer? They came to her, but my dear queen, the people, they're suffering so much. They don't even have bread to eat. Oh, so they can eat cake. This kind of blind leadership we should be convinced of by now, and at least in America. America and India both, you know. I saw one little quip recently where it came out, followed after a news report I was looking at. I like to keep up with where the pandemic is, how it's moving, because I don't think it's going to be over for at least another year. But they're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you it's going to end tomorrow. It certainly will end before school starts again. My goodness, you can't go to school in a pandemic, right? But anyway, it showed former President Trump with present Prime Minister Modi, just little quips of them each saying, America first, America first, America first, America first. Then you see Mr. Modi, India first, India first, India first. It's like, wow, these guys are two of a kind. And we saw it. Trump came down here to Houston also, in addition to almost all our congregation, to see Prime Minister Modi. And he came. And I never heard anybody say anything about what he spoke about. It must not have been particularly important, because nothing in the material world is actually particularly important. We may think it's important because it may be bigger or more of something or other than we are. But there's nothing in this material world that you can enjoy to the point of rendering pure devotional service to the Lord. Whereas, taking initiation from a bona fide spiritual master is that first step towards getting released from the material energy, released from our bodily consciousness. Right? And it's not easy. You can't do it alone. When we started this chapter, or at least this little section of it, verse number 13, I think it was, it described two things that were very important. One, that we understand we're bound to the enjoyment of our senses as long as we are in this material world. And when you're bound tightly enough, you cannot wriggle out by yourself. Right? The spiritual master has to untie those ropes of bondage before you can even start to exhibit devotional service. And devotional service really is just the engagement in Krishna's service on at least a rudimentary level, that we are doing some service, sweeping the floor, mopping the floor, right? Coming to the temple. Right? These are all base experiences within the material world. But the spiritual master is on a completely different level. What level is he on? He's on the level of pure devotional service. And if you ever want to have a difficult service, go take a disciple and mold him into a pure devotee, or her. Again, this is the problem with the material world. I say him because I'm a him. The lady was up here, she'd say, and she, because we're not freed yet. How difficult is it to get freed? Oh, it's not. Actually, you just completely surrender to the spiritual master. Then you can start experiencing love of Krishna. But first you have to surrender to him. And that means you consider him as great as the Supreme Lord himself. Now, how many of us can honestly say, I accept my spiritual master as good as Krishna? It's all over the scriptures. We've read it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. But can we actually approach our spiritual master at the level that one would approach Krishna? And when does Krishna have to be obliged to your needs and activities? Because there's one big stumbling block here. If we don't give ourselves completely to the service of our spiritual master and Krishna through the process of devotional service as engaged in by and for our spiritual masters, you don't get Krishna. And of course the example here is Bali Maharaj and Vamanadev. Vamanadev came to Bali Maharaj's kingdom to beg alms, even though he was keeping his real identity to himself, not to Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj, if we've heard this story, and I see there's some relatively new faces here, he was in charge of the entire administration of the universe, even though he was from the demonic planets and he himself was a demon. But as a demon, he also had a spiritual master. And his spiritual master told him, don't do anything this little dwarf says, because if you do, he'll take everything away from you. He's Vishnu. He's not some ordinary little Brahmin. Now you can imagine a cute little Brahmin about this high coming and asking you, please, sir, could you give me some alms? Who wouldn't? Right? Who wouldn't? Has anyone ever refused a child some little piece of anything when they ask you so sweetly? And I'm hopeless. I mean, I've got 2 grandkids and 2 other semi-grandkids that belong to somebody else, but they're always there with my grandkids, so it's all interconnected. And whatever they ask me for, I'll give them without even thinking about it, if I have it. So this is the position Krishna will take if you surrender to him. And the base level of that surrender is that we take up the process of bhakti yoga and learn what it's like to serve Krishna with no limits. I mean, Krishna has no limits, so is there any problem with our accepting his service with no limits? That Krishna asks you to come once or twice a week to worship the deity? Do you think that's enough to purify your heart from what you're doing the other 5 days? And how long does that service last? No more than 24 hours. Generally less than that, isn't it? It takes a lot. My spiritual master once ordered me to worship a particular deity every single day, no matter what. He said, I don't even care how sick you may be. You worship this deity. Every day. The only exceptions are if you go to visit your parents, which because I had children I would do once a year during the summer. Stay at our beach house. Dovetailing. It's dovetailing. Or if I had gone to India. Because whenever I was in India, which was often during those days, was to purchase paraphernalia for Sri Sri Radha Nila Madhava and their associates there on the altar. Every day. And I can assure you, I literally drug myself to this temple to do that worship. All the time, my whole mind is just raising, my Lord, I'm so sorry I'm here today. I'm a mess. I'm coughing, I'm sneezing, I'm swallowing mucus. But that's what he asked me to do. So I did it. Now I can assure you that 6 years of that wasn't enough to deliver me to the lotus feet of Krishna in pure devotional service. But it's a start. I came to realize that the condition of my material body, and everyone's material body, doesn't interest Krishna at all. He doesn't care whether you're healthy or dead. He just doesn't. Why? Because Krishna is not approachable to your material body. The material body doesn't approach Krishna. It's just a tag-along from the soul, which actually has a relationship with Krishna. So, when he begged alms from Bali Maharaj, he said, "My dear Brahmin, what do you want? I can give you anything. Just tell me." He said, "Me, I just want 3 steps of land." Bali Maharaj chuckled and said, "Do you even know who I am?" He's really shocked. Somebody in the universe doesn't know who he is. How many living entities are there in the universe? And he just can't believe it. Wow, who is this kid? Right? And he said, "You know who I am? I actually am controlling everything in the universe. I can give you an entire village. Actually, I could give you a country. Well, really, I could give you an entire planet floating in the universe if you just asked for it." So, of course, Vamana was very surprised that Bali was so great. Him being the Supreme Lord and all, it's hard to see somebody that's greater than you, as Bali is suspecting here at this point. He was so covered that he could not recognize the Supreme Personality of Godhead standing right in front of him. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava. So he's still chuckling, thinking, you're so inexperienced. You're a small boy, you don't know that I can give you everything. So, does everyone here know what 3 steps of land would be if you're begging? It's not linear. Yes. He knows. You were to one of my classes before. Huh? Yeah. So 3 steps of land is you take 1 step here, 1 step over here, 1 step over here. That gives you about 9 square feet of space, which is big enough to sit down and read the Bhagavatam, or do a yajna, or serve Krishna in some way or another. It's all a Brahmin needs. Enough room on the ground to sit. Huh? So he replied, Vamanadev replied to Bali, "Well, if I can't be satisfied with 3 steps of land wherein I can do my devotional service and worship of Krishna, when am I going to get satisfied? How far do I have to go? How much do I have to have in order to feel satisfied if I can't be satisfied with enough room to sit down?" At this point, Bali Maharaj was thinking, wow, sure, if that's all you want. And he's hoping, take those 3 steps of land here where I will always be able to associate with you. It completely changed his heart to see that someone did not come to him for any of his actual opulence. That even though they're standing in front of the controller, supposed controller, of the universe, he still only needs 3 steps of land to sit down and do whatever he has to do in his life. Right? So Bali Maharaj immediately agreed. "Oh yes, fine, I'll do that. You can have your 3 steps of land." Now, most of us know the story, but Vamanadev took one step and covered the planet. He took his second step and covered the known universe. So that means he's taken 2 steps and ultimately covered the entire universe, which Bali Maharaj is so proud to be managing right now. And he looked around and thought, And then he told Bali, I've covered everything with 2 steps, but you owe me 1 more step. Where shall I place it? And Bali Maharaj, the big controller, he said, my dear Lord, you can place it on my head. You can not only have everything in the universe, you can have me. My heart will be served to your lotus feet. And so, Vamanadev tied Bali with the ropes of Varuna and therefore conquered the entire universe. However, because Bali Maharaj was capable of giving away everything, and everything we mean the entire universe and the control thereof, he gave it back to Bali Maharaj and became his doorkeeper. Because this exalted person is worthy of controlling and managing the entire universe. Anybody ready to do that with their car? Just give it away? Walk home today? Thinking how wonderful the Lord is that He gave me the ability to give away my car? As if the Lord needs one? Huh? Right. So we'll keep going. That was only the first paragraph. Srila Jiva Goswami comments that the spiritual master is to be considered the Atma, or the very life of the disciple, since real life begins when one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. Although one may experience many seemingly wonderful or important events in a dream, one's real life begins when he wakes up. Similarly, since the spiritual master gives birth to the disciple by awakening him to spiritual life, a bona fide spiritual master, bona fide disciple, understands that his spiritual master is the very basis of his life. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all pleasure, and thus the Lord's giving himself to a pure devotee indicates the highest possible ecstasy. In its connection there is a following Stuti mantra: Anadad Dimahi Bhutani Chayanti. Indeed, it is from the all-blissful Spirit Supreme that all these creatures have come into being. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has further pointed out that when the Lord bestows his own self upon a pure devotee, such a fortunate devotee can actually see the Lord, touch him directly, engage in his service. So we have the deities of Sri Shivara Nila Madhava, Sri Shivara Giridhari, Sri Giriraj, Sri Sri Nitai Chaitanya Chandra, and Nitai Gaura Chandra, which we can see because they're made of different aspects of the material energy: brass, rock, sandstone, marble, which is not to be confused that because the deity appears to our mundane eyes to be a statue of some sort, made of some sort of material or another, derived from this earthly planet. That's not what the Lord is. That's not what the deity is. That's actually Krishna and Radharani themselves standing there on the altar, or sitting on the altar, or dancing on the altar, which we unfortunately don't see. Why? Because we're still on the bodily platform. And we are simply seeing that which we have conceived of through material, sensual perception, which shows just how unfortunate our material sensory perception is, that we can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead and it looks just like a statue. Ridananda Maharaj was here one time, many years ago, and he said, Krishna is so wonderful. He's so astute and determined to show himself to anyone that comes here, that if you want to believe he's a stone statue, he will act just like one, so as to not disturb your mental concoction of who he is. If you engage in pure devotional service, Srila Prabhupada one time came into his rooms in Los Angeles after a Harinam or so, some program outside of the temple. And as he stepped in, the only light was the light on the Sringasan, where the Lord was staying. He used to travel with Radha Krishna deities. And he said, oh, just see, Radha and Krishna are dancing tonight. And my spiritual master, among several other devotees, looked and looked and looked and looked and looked. But only Prabhupada saw them dancing. Because Prabhupada is a pure devotee, a spiritual master. So one should not place either on Krishna or the spiritual master mundane perception. The spiritual master is not an ordinary person. He's given his life to the service of Krishna, and therefore he is non-different from Krishna in the sense that as we serve the spiritual master with full surrender, it's as equal to serving the Lord in pure, perpetual devotional service. He is that example. He is that outlet for the conditioned souls to change their perspective to something spiritual instead of something material. So here it also lists, by the mercy of Sri Rupa Goswami, one thing one should do with the spiritual master. There are 4 things here. Accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of the bona fide spiritual master. Becoming initiated by the spiritual master, number 2. Number 3, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. And number 4, following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of the spiritual master. This is all we should busy ourselves with in material life. Because then you're rising above by dint of desire to have Krishna to guide you. The spiritual master guides you to Krishna. Krishna guides you to your spiritual master. It is no ordinary happening. It is completely spiritual. And if one does that, his life in this material world becomes perfect. And at that stage, Krishna is serving you in the same as you are serving him. So this is a big step. What does Krishna say in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Surrender everything to me. You. Surrender everything. Simple process. Just surrender everything. Give it up. Simple. Is that a big instruction? No. He said, you just do this one thing. Surrender to me. Then in the next verse he says, however, if you're so clouded by the material energy, right, then perform bhakti yoga, sadhana, to develop a desire to have me. Arjuna had him as a friend, and still he didn't want to do what Krishna wanted him to do, which is to kill 640 million people in the next 18 days, or have them killed, or that they get killed in that much time. I mean, most people wouldn't want to do that anyway, would they? But this is what he asked Arjuna to do. He couldn't do it. Shishiteham Parimam. He's asked Krishna, okay, I'm a disciple, surrender you, instruct me. And midway through, or two-thirds of the way through, he says this verse. Practice sadhana bhakti until you develop what? A desire to have Krishna. Because Krishna will serve his pure devotee unlimitedly. And of course, the pure devotee doesn't want anything more than he already has. And anything that he may need at any point will be provided by Krishna. That's the nature of Krishna and his pure devotee. It's a relationship. But that's all sadhana bhakti will give you. It'll bring you to the platform of wanting Krishna, desiring Krishna, where you see that there's nothing more important than having Krishna as your Lord and Master. And you have only your spiritual master to thank for that. Many devotees will help you on your way, but that's what we're trying to ascertain and establish within this verse. So Krishna, at that point, can now make a decision. Does he want to be controlled by this pure devotee? And his answer depends on just how determined the living entity, formally tied up in the material energy, is willing to go to serve him. He can go much further than that to serve the devotee. The devotee has to be completely willing to do whatever Krishna wants him to do. And the way he gets there is by doing that which the spiritual master explains to us. This is what I want you to do. So you should take that up as your only order. Your only business in the material world is to get out of it by following purely your spiritual master so that you can have Krishna's desire to serve you, to look forward to. Is that better than anything else? I mean, Nainamrita Prabhu gave a beautiful class about just how insignificant all your gazillions of monies are. I spend time with babies, so one money is one thing. All the coins are one money, the bills are one money. So there's no real value, right? You see that children aren't so contaminated. They see it as it is. But he described how none of your money will make you happy, because while you have it, you worry about it not going away. And when it goes away, you worry about how to get it back. And if you don't have it already, you want it again. Never stops. And always, as Chaitanya Prabhu described on Tuesday, you may, with all your piety and your devotional efforts and whatever you did, end up with enough good karma to go back to the heavenly worlds. Whereas he was describing, because he grew up on a mango plantation, the mangoes are as large as elephants. He relates to that. He knows how nice a big, juicy, tree-ripened mango tastes. And if it's as big as an elephant, well, okay then. I can do that. But he also then mentioned that all of those pleasures in the heavenly world are temporary, and you're going to lose them as soon as that much karma goes. Boom, out of the way. There it is. So the chapter opened, verse 13, with the statement, one has to have a spiritual master in order to get out of this material world. Just the other question before this was, what is the material energy? Now the question is, how do we get out of the material energy? It sounds difficult. And he agrees, yes, it's difficult, because you have to have no other interest than to follow the guidance of the spiritual master. So, I've got 2.5 minutes for a question. Yes, Vishal Prabhu.
Thank you. So
Question, not a statement.
Says who? I can say what I want, right? I can make a comment, question, what I want.
Relative to the verse.
Yeah, it's relevant.
And the purport. and everything I
Well,
said
no.
prior to this.
No, who said that? That's not GBC rule. Okay, Prabhupada said on August 6th, 1970, our society is like one big family, and our relationships should be based on love and trust. We must give up the fighting spirit and use our intelligence to push ahead. So you mentioned Donald Trump, he was here with Modi. We had a big chance to make a big impact in the world, right? He was on stage with Modi and there's a big photo up. We could have been on stage, right, giving him a go in this veggie burger. He loves Big Macs apparently, right? But no, we were outside like some beggars, man. We are beggars, but like, why didn't we use our intelligence to be on stage? On stage, there were so many other groups on there, but we dropped the ball again. So my blood boils, right, when we actually drop the ball so many times and we think, oh, Hari Bol, it's God's Krishna's mercy.
What's the
I don't know,
question?
man. That's the comment right there.
I didn't want to comment. I said I wanted a question.
No, I'm making a comment because I want to say something. That's my comment. It says, right, this is Prabhupada's words. Today's August 6th.
I don't doubt his words, but ask a question. Don't give me a statement.
Why can't I give you a statement?
Because I asked for a question. Can you do one
I don't
thing
give you.
somebody
I'm going to
asked
give you a
you to do?
statement. I'm going to give you an impact statement. So we have a chance tomorrow, White Lady
You
Festival.
can make a really
Let's not blow
interesting
it.
and good question out of that statement, but make
Say
it a
again?
question.
Say again?
Please. Then I can answer it.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, wonderful class. And nice, you said we see Krishna through spiritual master. And we see spiritual master through Krishna. So we see the Krishna in our spiritual master. We have to
Yes.
see Krishna in our spiritual master.
One would hope. That's a level to get to. But that's how we should approach. Actually, when Srila Prabhupada first offered initiation, right? He simply put on the board, initiation means the Guru is God. Blew everybody's mind. Because Prabhupada spoke again and again and again and again and again about how the Maya body conception of you or God, I am God, is wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. And then he put up this poster that your spiritual master is considered to be God. So then he had to explain that because it just shorted everybody's circuits out. For so many months he's been saying, no one can become God. There is only one God. His name is Krishna. He incorporated the movement as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not God Consciousness. So it's clear what he's speaking. Then he told them before the initiation, he said, the reason it's like that is because just like the prime minister of a country is representing the president that he is dealt with and respected on the level that the president of that country, because he will give you Krishna, you can accept him at the same level as Krishna because he's acting on behalf of Krishna. And then they, okay, we're in. They all took initiation. You had the microphone again?
First, let me apologize for my. I was a bit. Sorry about that.
I mean, you made a wonderful statement, and it's very clear.
But Prabhupada
But
said,
if you don't answer a question, I have nothing to say to it.
So this is really okay. Basically, he said the spiritual master is as good as God, not
Yeah.
God, as good as God. So that's important.
Well, what he put on the board was the spiritual master is God. He didn't put as good as God. It's in the Leelamrita. Look it up. All right. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So tomorrow will be text number 23, given by His Grace, Radha Krishna Prabhu. So anything I may have said that may be incorrect or etc., he'll certainly straighten you out. The statement you made was criticizing the present devotees in the temple. And that is really